Christian Whiton, former State Department senior advisor and author of Smart Power Between Diplomacy and War. Good to see you, Christian.
Good to see you, Arthel.
Okay, let's first start about this. Your first thoughts when you heard about this phone call from Putin to President Obama.
Well, I thought it was a bit of a ruse. I mean, it's Putin basically trying to see what he can get away with and limit any economic downside. There hasn't been a whole lot for Russia, but Putin wants to limit any downside. But, you know, fundamentally, he doesn't actually want a deal. There's no agreement that he wants to reach that he's initiating. It's basically a probe and a gesture meant to change the topic.
So then if you look at Putin posturing based on this phone call, what do you think it's going to say about Putin's next move?
Well, I think immediately we know that Putin wants there to be instability in Ukraine. He wants Ukraine to be in crisis. He does not want the new, more Western-looking, Western-leaning government to succeed. By keeping troops near Ukraine with a specter of a possible invasion, he helps, you know, sort of perpetuate that sense of crisis in Ukraine. And who knows? I mean, we don't actually know what his intentions are. Our intelligence community, our $80 billion a year intelligence bureaucracy, missed the fact that he was going to invade Ukraine, so we can't really rely on it to tell us if he's going to invade eastern Ukraine or not. But that's a real possibility, especially if he senses that he's pushing on an open door with the West.
Yeah, in the meantime, Christian, as you know, the Russia troop buildup continues near the Ukraine border, and they're not sure. They can't prove for sure, they being the intelligence bureaucracy that you're talking about, can't prove for sure that this is indeed just simply part of an exercise. Should we be alarmed or concerned?
I think you have to be alarmed. It's, you know, there have been sources within the military that have told Fox News it's not consistent with any exercise because they're not actually exercising. They're just there. It could just be to create a sense of crisis in Ukraine, to destabilize the government there. But it could also be a move on Ukraine. I mean, it seems like Putin isn't quite, you know, of the mind that he would actually wants to start a European war, but certainly strongmen dictators make miscalculations. They do things that wouldn't necessarily seem logical. A war with Ukraine that potentially, you know, had the risk of drawing in NATO would be detrimental to the Russian economy, but, you know, Putin has gone down this road of making a very strong appeal to Russian nationalism, and once you start down that road, it may not be so easy to get off.
Yeah, but how do you deter him from that road? How do you derail him with, you know, moves? And also, before you answer that, regarding the invasion or annexation of Crimea, I mean, should the U.S. and NATO just concede what's done is done?
Well, that's what's so brilliant about what Putin's doing, is because by now switching the topic to whether he's going to invade eastern Ukraine and whether he's making a bona fide sort of diplomatic outreach to the West, we've ceased to talk about whether that is justified. We won't recognize formally the annexation of Crimea, but it's a fait accompli and is now a de facto part of Russia. What we can do to deter Putin, which I think is what we ought to do, I mean, the defense of Ukraine has to fall primarily to Ukrainians. Ukraine is not part of NATO. Nonetheless, we should conceptually be willing to enable free people who want to fight for themselves. I mean, to an extent, that's something we never really had in Iraq,
Does that mean the U.S. should provide Ukraine with military equipment?
I think so. The administration so far is just providing non-lethal assistance, food, and that type of thing. Ukraine actually has quite a bit of food. They export a lot. Actual military goods and materiel, not U.S. troops on the ground, but the support that Ukraine needs. And then also NATO should be reoriented toward confronting Russia. It's been all about Afghanistan for the last 12 or 13 years. Maybe shift it back to its initial objective.
When you say confronting Russia, what do you mean?
I think we should move. I mean, red lines coming from the mouths of politicians have ceased to mean anything. So you have to signal what your military, what you're willing to fight for. NATO is an alliance. And alliances used to mean an attack on one was an attack on all, so that a Russian move on the Baltics, which are part of NATO, or on Poland, does mean war. And we have to be prepared for that. And by being prepared for it, we'll actually make it less likely. I would move the U.S. forces and the UK forces that are stationed in Germany, move them permanently to Poland. Make that a red line that's really something, and frankly to reverse the cuts in the military that we've been doing here in the United States. Great Britain has been doing well, and Europe also pressured to do more. You have countries spending only 1 or 2% of GDP on their defense. They should get closer to our level, which is about 4%.
So many follow-up questions popping into my mind, Christian, but I'm just told that I'm out of time, so I will have to pick it up another time when you come back. Christian Whiton, good to see you. Thank you.